Hi, welcome to John's Tarot. I'm glad you're here. I hope you're having a nice holiday. It is Christmas week. And I want you to know, in terms of what I'm doing here in John's Tarot, I'm not producing entertainment for the masses. I'm here to walk with the willing. So today's episode is a pause, not a break, not an ending, but a moment to look back at where we've been and to gently orient toward where we're going. This series has been called the Awakening series. But awakening isn't an event, it's a process. And for me, that process took years. And this process needs space to be seen, felt, and integrated. So today, I'm not introducing any new material, but we're listening for the pattern that's been forming. So take a breath. Let's arrive together. What awakening actually is. When people hear the word awakening, they often imagine clarity, relief, answers. But that's not how it usually begins. Awakening often starts as discomfort, a sense that something no longer fits, a quiet knowing that the stories we relied on about ourselves, about society, about meaning are incomplete. Awakening isn't about becoming special, it's about becoming honest. And honesty has consequences. This series was never about teaching beliefs. It's always been about learning to see, internally and externally, without immediately reaching for certainty. That's the through line of everything we've covered. Back in episode 1, The Call to Wake Up, we began with the recognition that something is shifting in individuals and collectively. Not just politically, not just culturally, but psychologically. A sense that the old ways of orienting through ideology, identity, or authority are no longer sufficient. This is what Jung called the call. The moment when the psyche realizes it can no longer remain unconscious without paying a price. For some, that call comes through crisis. For others, through recovery. For others, through exhaustion, grief, or disillusionment. But the call is always personal. And once it's heard, it cannot be unheard. Episode 2 was about shadow work, meeting what we avoid. From awakening, we move directly into shadow. Because awakening without shadow work leads to inflation, what they call spiritual bypassing. The shadow's not evil. It's not what we've been unable or unwilling to see. It's disowned fear, disowned anger, disowned vulnerability, disowned complicity. This is where many people turn away, because the shadow doesn't let us stay innocent. It asks us to how we participate, not just how we suffer. Shadow work humbles the ego. It removes the fantasy of being awake while others are not. And without that humbling, there is no real transformation. In the 12-step organization I'm involved with, I often see people fail when it comes to doing the shadow work, or steps 4, 5, and 6, because looking at themselves is just too terrifying. Their ego is not ready to humble itself. And those are the people that generally go out. It's not that bad. We haven't done anything in our past that somebody else hasn't done before us. Episode 3, Living in a Polarized World. Once shadow is encountered, the world looks different. Polarization stops being an abstract idea and becomes something we can feel inside ourselves. We begin to notice how quickly we choose sides, how certainty calms anxiety, how easily fear turns into righteousness. This episode wasn't about politics alone. It was about psychological splitting. The human tendency to divide the world into good and evil, us and them, right and wrong. Polarization is a defense against complexity. An awakening asks us to tolerate complexity without collapsing. That's difficult work and lonely work, but it is necessary. What this series has been doing, if you step back and look at the arc, you may notice something important. This series hasn't been giving answers. It's been removing false ones. It's been loosening certainty, softening identification, increasing interior responsibilities that can feel destabilizing. But destabilization is often the psyche reorganizing itself around a deeper center. This is not regression, it's preparation. Where are we now in terms of what I'm doing with the podcast and the arc of the teaching I'm taking you through? After awakening, after the shadow, after polarization, the psyche asks a new question. If I can no longer rely on certainty, and I no longer want to live unconsciously, what guides me now? This is where many people either retreat back into ideology, grasp at spiritual identity, or disengage entirely. But there is another movement possible, an inward one. Where are we going? Orientation to the self. The next phase of this work turns inward, not as withdrawal, but as reorientation toward what Jung called the self, not the ego, not the persona, not the roles we play, but the deeper organizing center of the psyche, the place from which meaning emerges, rather than being imposed. This is where wisdom enters, not as information, but as lived alignment. This is also where figures like Sophia appear, not as concepts, but as symbols of emergent truth. We're moving from awakening through integration and seeing to living and knowing, and then to embodying. Slowly, carefully, humanely. This is an invitation, not a promise. I want to end this episode without conclusions, just an invitation to notice what has already shifted in you, to respect the pace of your own psyche, to allow uncertainty to remain open rather than prematurely resolved. This work is not about becoming enlightened. It's about becoming real. And real people move slowly, feel deeply, and live imperfectly, but consciously. So thank you for walking this path with me. We'll continue, not louder, but deeper. So have a wonderful holiday. I'll pick up after Christmas. I have another episode ready to go. So have a wonderful holiday. I will see you after Christmas. Be careful, be cool, be kind. Remember, have courage. Find faith, baby. It's going to be all right. Okay, have a wonderful holiday, everybody. Bye-bye.